Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's video we are doing part 3 and the final part to our masculine cards made easy. If you've followed along to any part of this series, I appreciate your time, number one, but I hope that you got some ideas on ways to make masculine cards easier for you. These are just 3 of my go-to techniques or methods or things that come to mind when I need to make a card for a man. So in the first part, we talked about really catering the card to them. In the second part, we talked about pattern paper. And in this one, we're talking about geometrics. So I'm going to be using triangles today for mine, but you could use circles, stars, squares, diamonds, whatever geometric shape, stripes, it doesn't matter. Just find a geometric shape that works for you or that you have in your stash. I knew I was going to be doing a lot of die cutting, and for a second there I toyed with the idea of using my Cricut to cut out all of these triangles, but I went with this Fun Stamper's Journey layering triangle die set, and I went to my colored cardstock stash. This is cardstock that I get from Cardstock Warehouse. The yellow is WOODSTOCK and it's called GIALLO, Giallo. I'll put it below. Then there's COLORPLAN, Real Gray, and then there's Lesabo colors, and that one is Amazon, and that's that really pretty like deep teal. My plan here is to have a band of these triangles going across the panel here, starting in the kind of toward the bottom left, going up to the top right. I end up going somewhat awry. It's not the end of the world. It's just not what I had in mind. But if I were to make this again, I would be a little more conscious of how I'm laying these triangles down. So I actually put down pencil and realized I don't really need to do that. I probably should have done that. That may have actually helped me. But I'm just going to use liquid glue to glue down these triangles. As I do this, I'm going to make sure that I don't have 2 of the same color touching one another, or like directly across from one another. They might be catty corner, but I don't want them directly across from one another. And I'm just going to glue these down flat. If you wanted to, you could glue extras of these together for more dimension. And you wouldn't necessarily have to do that with every single one of them. If you wanted to have some that had like 2 layers of cardstock behind them and others that had 4 and ones that were glued directly, that would be really cool. And that would add a lot of interest. This card is very, very simple. And so if you wanted to step it up, that is an option. Another option would be to glue this down and then trim around all of the colored cardstock and then put maybe foam tape behind that just to pop the whole panel up from your card base. You could even do it to where you had like the top section of it a different color than the bottom section, if you wanted to incorporate different colors or maybe more shades of the same color. And that will come into play in the next card that we do. But this is the first one. And I'm just going to go through like you see me doing and trying to lay these down to where they are flush with one another. But I don't have the same color touching or right across from one another. They may be catty corner like you see here, but they're not directly across. And I'm just repeating this pattern the whole way through. And I think it's not this one, but I think it's a couple down the road where I accidentally turn the triangle. I don't know what I was thinking, but I accidentally turned the triangle. And so instead of having it as a, straight band across, it does have a little bit more movement to it, which is not the end of the world. If these were like a perfect, like right triangle, this wouldn't be an issue, but they are not. And so I think it's this one right here. This blue I just laid down. Yeah, I didn't do that right. So, like I said, it has a little bit more movement to it than I anticipated or that I had in mind. But again, it's not the end of the world. It turns out just fine. So I'm going to continue to glue these all across, and then we will come back to the sentiment on this one. I just don't want to bore you to tears with me literally like gluing things down and, watching glue dry, essentially. So that one's all done. I did take some scissors and trim off kind of the excess that was hanging off. That panel is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I do end up kind of trimming that down a little bit further just so I can have a mat on my card, but I do that in a moment. This one, I took out the three smallest triangles from that Fun Stamper's Journey stamp set, and I cut them out again from those same colors of cardstock. And I end up having to do a little bit more die cutting because I don't have quite enough triangles. But I'm just going to see, I originally was going to have just 3 of the big ones, but I'm glad that I went back and cut more because it needed to be fuller. It looked very stark and kind of unfinished. So I am glad that I went back and cut out more of these triangles. You could do a shaped card with this and have it be even more geared toward that particular shape you're using. That is an option, and I've shown how to make shape cards in the past on my channel, but that's another way that you could get more geometric in there. Granted, a rectangle of 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 is a geometric shape, but if you wanted to have something a little more interesting or something that continue to play off, this triangle that we're using here, you can make a triangle shaped card. That'd be really cool. I'm just going to layer them. And again, I'm trying to make sure that I don't have 2 of the same color next to each other. Now, that's a little less important on this one. I'm trying to make sure that I don't have 2 of the same large triangle together. So let me clarify that, because it's going to be kind of impossible to get none of the same colored triangle because I'm using all 3 colors on each of these little components. So I'm trying to make sure that I don't have 2 of the large triangle shape touching or right next to one another. I think I end up having that happen in the final card, but again, your eye is not necessarily drawn to that per se, so it's not really the end of the world. But I am going to go through and just kind of play with my layout here. One of the things that you could have done, I did 3 different colors here, completely different colors. But one of my ideas was to do like an ombre, so having like a light, medium, and dark of the same color. So a light, medium, and dark gray, a light and medium yellow. You could do blues, you could do greens, you could do, blacks and grays or browns. I chose to do, because I had those colors of cardstock out for the previous card, so I just continued to go ahead and use those ones that I had. But this is kind of a general layout that I have right here. One of the things I'm going to do to make my life a little bit easier, instead of gluing each one of these pieces down to the base, I'm going to glue them all together and then glue that big triangle down. That saves me a little bit of fidgeting time. And you could always use your press and seal for this final step when you get everything kind of laid out and all the large triangles and components are in the place that you want them. You could always use some press and seal to help you glue these down. This is another instance where if you wanted to add more dimension, you could for some more interest. If you wanted to add some splatters to the background, or if you have like a little teeny tiny triangle die, or maybe you used circles instead of triangles. If you have a teeny tiny circle die or circle stamp, you could stamp those in the background just to fill it up a little bit more. You could even do some like dry embossing in the background to help it not be so, I don't want to say plain, but just to give the background a little bit more texture. That is also an option. So I have this little vacuum that I bought from We Are Memory Makers, or We Are Keepers. I think they're called We Are Keepers now, right? I think so. And I just had a whole bunch of little hairs on these dies. I think it's time for me to kind of clean my die cutting plates, because I keep getting a whole bunch of little hairs, and they were all over my desk and they were getting all over everything. So I took that little vacuum, which was kind of a spur of the moment random buy, but is actually a very, very handy tool. I really enjoy it. It was only like 20 bucks, so it wasn't even like an expensive crafty tool. But here I am once again just taking that liquid glue and gluing these down. This is all 110-pound cardstock, or at least 100-pound. So it is fairly thick. But again, the same thing that we could have done on that first card, we could do here, where we have maybe some of these triangles have 2 layers behind them, or maybe you have some foam tape behind certain large triangles and not others, or maybe you put 2 layers. Beware that the more dimension you add, the thicker it's going to get, and the more postage you may have to pay if you plan to mail this instead of put it in a package or hand deliver it. So that's something to be conscious of. I tried to kind of rein in the dimension because I don't know, I'm going to try to sell these at a craft fair coming up. And so I don't know how these people are going to be giving these. So I tried to kind of rein in the dimension a little bit. So once I have these placed down, I'm going to take some long scissors and kind of trim off the parts that are overhanging. And then I do end up taking both of these panels to my paper trimmer. The one we're working on right here, we're going to trim down, I think I do 1/4 of an inch on each side. And then the other one, I think I do 1/8 of an inch. Nope, it's the opposite. I'm going to do an 1/8 of an inch on this one and 1/4 of an inch on the other one from two sides, the top and then one side. I wanted to have a larger border on this one and a smaller border on this one and a larger border on the other one. And I'm going to take some of the same cardstock we've been using to create essentially mats. This cardstock is much more expensive than what I use on anything else. So instead of making a full like card base that is that color, I just cut a panel and we'll glue that behind. So I did have a little bit of a gap here, and I'm taking one of the pieces that I trimmed off and just gluing that back in place so that I can kind of fill up this gap just a little bit. For the sentiments, on this one, I stamped it directly on the card base. I took a Honeybee stamp set that is called Kiss the Cook, and I found this particular stamp in here, and I'm using Concord and 9th. This is Peacock ink, and it matches that dark teal fairly well. And I stamped this directly onto the card base after I have trimmed it. The second one, I'm going to stamp it on just a piece of scrap white HAMMERMILL cardstock, which is what my white panels are. And I'm going to stamp that with this cobblestone ink, and I'm going to stamp it a couple of times just because it didn't stamp very good the first time. I think that was my fault. I don't think I inked it very well because the ink pad is still very juicy. And I'm just going to, like I said, use a scrap and stamp this a couple times so I can get a good dark impression. I've been doing this more and more for sentiments that I don't have a coordinating die set for, and this is taking a pencil and just outlining it. I didn't want this to be so blocky, although I could have, just because there are so many like sharp angles with this particular card design. I could have done that. However, I wanted this to be a little more fluid and look more I don't want to say professional, but I just wanted it to be a little more flowy. So maybe help it stand out from all the sharp angles that are on the background. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a pencil and just outline this around, giving myself just a little bit of a white border. And then I'm going to take some sharp scissors, and in my right hand, which is my dominant hand, I'm going to hold those scissors vertical. And then with my left hand, I'm going to rotate the paper around. This helps you get smoother cuts. This also helps you it just helps you get a little bit more smooth of cuts and makes it look a little bit nicer. You could absolutely, I don't know if this stamp set has a coordinating die. Honeybee is usually really, really good about having coordinating dies for their stamp sets, but I don't have that if that is available. So this is what I've been doing on several of my videos, and a lot of my things lately is just taking a pencil and outlining it. You could also take a pencil and outline it, and then if you have a Brother Scan and Cut, you could actually put that in your Brother Scan and Cut and have it cut it if you would prefer. Just options. Once I was done cutting that out, I did take my pencil eraser and go around the edges and clean that up on any of the pencil marks I may have missed. Now I'm flipping this one that we had kind of the wonky band and I'm taking some Altenew Instant Dimension foam tape to the back of that one just because that one is so simple. I wanted to give it just a little bit more oomph, so I decided to pop that up on some foam tape. The other one I'm going to glue flat down to that Amazon card panel, and the other one I'm gluing down to that real gray. Again, I'm trying to conserve my colored cardstock, which is typically quadruple the price of my white, at least. And so I just glued these to panels instead of gluing them to fully colored card bases, if that makes sense. To the back of this sentiment that I fussy cut out, I did put some Dollar Tree foam squares on the back of that, and that's how I will adhere that one. But this one, it's glued flat. So, excuse me, the sentiment is on the front, on the panel itself. So there isn't anything to pop up or add dimension to. So I'm going to glue this one down with my foam squares, or my foam tape, and then remove the backers for the other one. And then these 2 cards will be done. So that is it for me. Thank you so much for spending time with me. I hope that you have felt inspired or gotten some tips or ideas that you want to try for your masculine cards or your Father's Day cards this year. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to drop those in the comment section below. But otherwise, I appreciate your time. Hope you felt inspired, and we will see you again next time. Bye.